your book covers all the ground that we're about to jump over. So, but I want to flash forward to when you were part of the Apollo Theater's house band, and it was at that time, if I'm not mistaken, that you first met up with Bernard Edwards. Um, but the two of you didn't seem to connect well in your initial meeting. So I wanted to ask you, how did you manage to become creative partners when your personalities didn't seem to vibe?
Um, whenever, yes, you told the story exactly right. So our first meeting went belly up, but that's because our first meeting was just about talking.
Hmm.
About playing music. Our second meeting was we were actually playing music together, and we didn't realize that we were the same people that had met earlier because that first meeting was over the phone.
Right.
So once we met with instruments in our hand and we were playing a gig, we were on a pickup gig, and it was clear from that gig the guys in charge, even though we were just hired for the night, were Bernard and myself. We sort of took over the band. We helped it become a cohesive unit. And at the end of the night, it was like, man, brother, give me your number. Yeah, give me your number.
Hmm. Yeah.
Your name is Nile. You're the dude, you know. You're that weird dude who called me about the band with the oboe and the recorder. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm that dude. He was, wow, okay, you're different than I thought. And next thing you know, we were inseparable. So the first day we met on a job playing music, we were never really apart again. We certainly weren't apart musically, and we were only apart. Really weren't apart spiritually. You know, we just had the typical stuff that siblings go through or
Hmm.
married couples go through. You know, it's like you get pissed off and say, man, you know, I'm tired of you wearing that green shirt. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then so we had a sort of separation for a while, but when we got back together, it was like we had never stopped working together.
Yeah. And if I also get it correct, it was just a few years after you, I guess, essentially reunited, that he passed away. Is that correct?
That's correct. We put out a record in '93, and Bernard died in '96. We were in Japan doing a big tribute concert to me. I had won an award called the Super Producer of the Year, and on this show, you invite a lot of artists that have been influential in your life, and vice versa. So I had Slash, I had Steve Winwood, I had Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran, I had Sister Sledge, and of course I had Bernard Edwards and Chic.
Hmm.
And so we did 3 sold-out concerts at the big stadium, the Budokan, and actually it would be called an arena, not a stadium. So we did 3 huge concerts, 3 sold-out concerts, the last culminating in a 90-minute television special. And Bernard passed out at the midway point of the show,
Mm.
and he was revived, and he continued playing the show. After the show, we went back to our hotel room, and he passed away. And the way that I found his body was the following morning. I was called and told that Mr. Edwards wouldn't answer his wake-up call, and need was the worst night of my life. I convinced housekeeping to open his door, and I found him lying there right away. I mean, he was already in a state of extreme rigor mortis.
Mm.
So he had died at least 7 hours before.
Wow. Um, what will you remember most about him?
His unbelievable musicality and the amount of fun that we had making music. I cannot tell you, I have never laughed as much as I did when I was in the presence, in the company of Bernard, and when we were making music. So we laughed all the time in general, but when we were making music, oh man, I wish somebody had just recorded all of the conversations that we had, because it would probably be one of the funniest comedy books and routines ever. Because
So,
we never stopped laughing. As a matter of fact, I put out a box set last year, and in it I played one of the tracks where we were trying to cut a serious song, a ballad, and it takes us 8 minutes to record this 4-minute song, but the 8 minutes are of us laughing and joking, and it's hysterical. And it's really like that on every song. We just happened to save that one
Uh-huh.
because it was probably at the end of a reel of tape, and it was just the funniest thing you've ever heard in your life.
Well, I got to ask you about, obviously, about the group Chic. You guys had enormous success with the songs that I mentioned in the intro and more. What do you consider to be one of the highlights of those years that still stands out for you today?
Probably the biggest highlight, other than getting signed, was during the summer of 1979, during the Disco Sucks phenomenon that happened in Chicago at Comiskey Park. Um, we were, up until that point, everybody loved us. And after that event, we were sort of persona non grata. And nobody would call us. They wouldn't answer our phone calls, blah, blah, blah. It was incredible. It was like we were blacklisted in a matter of hours. So what had happened is that we had a song called Good Times out, and it was going up the charts with a song called My Sharona by the Knack.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the entire music industry seemed to rally behind the Knack, and as if they were the saviors of rock and roll. And Chic, we were the sort of the dark underlord of disco, the music of blacks and gays and women and Latino, and I was like, what is going on? And I saw it almost looked like an industry-wide smear campaign, and it was over a record. And I kept thinking to myself, we're in the same business. The Chic and Knack and the Knack, we're in the same business. What is the problem? We're not against you. I mean, when we put out music, of course we're competitive, but not competitive to the point of slander and and real hatred. Matter of fact, we got along great with the Knack. When they came into the studio to do their next record, they were in the studio that we lived in, and we became buddies. We even hung out with Sharona. She was actually cool. She was the girlfriend of one of the guys.
Oh, okay.
So it was totally cool between us, but the industry basically carried the Knack on their shoulders to number one. Now, My Sharona was a great song, no disrespect to that, but Good Times went on to inspire the first big hip hop record, Rapper's Delight.
Right.
Another one, Bites the Dust by Queen, Bounce, Rock, Roll, Skate, Radio Clash, New Sensation by In Excess. I mean, tons and tons and tons of records. But meanwhile, no one ever copied. It was one of those things. It was a cute ditty with a nice lick, but the spirituality and the musicality of Good Times was a groundbreaking thing. I mean, it was something that changed our lives and wound up changing music. And we couldn't understand why it was so that it was meant so harshly. So when Good Times went to number one, it was maybe the biggest moment of my career, because after it dropped from number one, we never had a hit record again. But the funny thing about it is that 1 year to the date, the next record, the year that was number one year after Good Times was number one, was Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. A year later, still people were using that doom, don't, 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 bump, bump. A year later, and that was already after Rapper's Delight had happened, and Bounce Rock. I mean, it was like, so Good Times almost lived on and on and on. And Bernard and I wound up becoming, big producers. I wound up doing Bowie and Madonna and Duran, and Bernard did Duran. Bernard is the only producer to ever have a James Bond theme go number one. He did A View to a Kill. And,
okay.
So even Paul McCartney and Wings didn't go number one with Live and Let Die.
Yeah.
But Bernard went number one with View to a Kill. So we both went on to have big careers after Good Times and after Disco Sucks. And the Knack never had a hit record ever again after My Sharona. Their follow-up single did okay, but it certainly wasn't a hit. And that's it. They never had a hit, and Good Times lived on. And, of course, Bernard and I lived on.
Now, because you were labeled a disco group, did you feel that Chic was never respected as a quote-unquote true band?
Correct. And not only not I couldn't say it better myself. And not only because of that, but because we were sort of anonymous kinds of people. We didn't have a standout star, and as you well know, in the media business, people need they can't. It's hard for them to decipher complex concepts. So they need somebody to stand out. It's easy to focus on one person.
Yeah.
So even though traditionally it's easier to break groups, but it's easier to break a group with a front person.
Right.
So you can have Queen and have Freddie Mercury be the front person. Like, even though the other people in Queen are super important to it, if they walked up to you, you wouldn't even recognize them.
Right. Yeah.
But you recognize Freddie Mercury, you recognize Mick Jagger.
Right.
So that was the thing, is that we never really had a front person. And Bernard and I, our personalities were not like, they were not like Prince. We weren't stars. We weren't pretty. We weren't those guys. So we were just sort of, musicians. We were jazz, R&B, funk guys who learned how to write good songs. And so we were basically instrumentalists. And in the R&B world, instrumentalists were popular, but not like in the rock world.
Mm-hmm.
In the rock world, if you're a popular lead guitar player, sometimes, like in the case of Slash or Eric Clapton and people like that, you become famous just like the lead singer.
Right.
But that doesn't happen in the R&B world.
Right.
It happened a little bit with the Isley Brothers, but that's about it. It just doesn't happen. The musicians themselves don't become stars. And since it was our band, we didn't get the same recognition. So in a case of something like Rufus, and you have a star like a Chaka Khan, even though Tony Maiden and all those guys, would do the writing and what have you, because you have someone who's beautiful and sings like Chaka Khan, you can focus on her and make her the star.
Right.
Heat Wave, same thing. You have Rod Temperton and those cats in the band writing the songs, but you could focus on Johnny because he's a good-looking guy, great singer. With Chic, we didn't have that. We had what we called the Chic mystique, and we wanted our music to be the star because we knew we weren't stars.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say. So you mix that with the fact that we didn't exist before '77. We came out at the height of the disco thing. We excelled during the disco thing. It only seems reasonable and logical that people would associate us with disco more than R&B or more than funk, and because we didn't have a Philip Bailey or or somebody like that to focus on, or Maurice White.
But it seemed as if you guys were cognizant of that, because at one point you did put a young lady there, I guess, who I guess the purpose was so that she would be kind of like the focus, pretty similar to Rufus and Chaka Khan kind of thing. But that ended up, I guess, quite not working out.
Well, we always had, the concept of the eye candy going on, and it wasn't to make the person a star. It was to give them something to look at, because we know that performance of music is a visual type of thing as well as an oral thing. You know what I mean? Like, half of what made Miles so cool was not only was he a genius musician and incredible, but you liked the presentation. He had a certain sense of hip and a certain sense of cool and a swagger that was incredible, and you loved going to check out Miles play. So we knew that we had to have our own sense of swagger that we could pull off. Hence the clothing, hence the designers, and putting the girls in Fendi and even mentioning it in songs. I mean, now it's almost funny. Like, you listen to any current record and all they talk about is Prada and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and I gotta sit back in the Maybach and I gotta do this and blah blah blah. But when we wrote the lyrics, Halston, Gucci, Fiorucci, no one, and I have researched it, you can't find a pop record before He's the Greatest Dancer that mentions clothing designers as a lyric in a song.
Yeah.
No one ever did that. But when we wrote those lyrics, it's because we were trying to represent the cutting edge underground world, and we wanted people to go, what is that? What is that? What is Halston? What is Gucci? What is Fiorucci? And we thought by rhyming it and having that cool little thing that it would make Sister Sledge cutting edge, although they didn't know what they were singing about when they sang it. They had no idea who Halston was, what Gucci was. They may have known Gucci, maybe.
Well, I was
They
going to ask you
absolutely
about
didn't know
that too.
Fiorucci.
I was going to ask you about Sister Sledge in particular because of your success with Chic, you guys got that opportunity to produce them, and I was going to ask you what it was like working with them. I understand there was like a little bit of tension.
Yeah, it was a little bit of tension because of even the lyrics in that song in particular. And He's the Greatest Dancer. We have a philosophy when it comes to our songwriting, which we call DHM. Every song has to have a core truth, a deep hidden meaning, that even if the people see one thing, we know what the song means to us. So if you don't understand the hidden meaning, it's okay. You can have it mean whatever you want to you, but the song has to mean what it means to us, or else we can't do it.
Hmm.
So He's the Greatest Dancer was a song about this guy who was so fantastic that even a group like Sister Sledge, who were church-going girls who would not have a one-night stand, that he was so powerful and so enthralling that they would reset their moral compass for him.
Hmm.
So we had written a lyric that went, "My creme de la creme, please take me home." And they asked us, quite nicely by the way, to change it to "My creme de la creme, please don't go home." And we went, "You can't say that." And they said, "Well, why not? It's our record. It makes sense. It sounds the same." And we said, "No, but you don't understand. That changes the core truth of the song. You can't just say, 'My creme de la creme, please don't go home,' because now what's happening is that it's now your song. It's now you saying, but please don't go home, please don't go home." No, it's the other way around. It's you superimposing your thoughts on him. "My creme de la creme, please take me home." It's He's the Greatest Dancer, not I'm watching the Greatest Dancer. It's not like, oh my God, that guy over there is the greatest dancer. It's, oh, wow, he's the greatest dancer that I've ever seen. And then now you explain how great he is by saying one night you give him the whole story, backstory, beginning him in one night in a disco on the outskirts of Frisco. I was cruising with my favorite gang. And then you get to that point. He wears the finest clothes, the best designers, heaven knows. Ooh, from his head down to his toes. Halston, Gucci, Fiorucci. It's like he looks like a still. That man is dressed to kill. Oh, wow. He's the greatest dancer that I've ever seen.
You still,
So it's like everything about him is so overwhelming and so powerful. You, Sister Sledge, the church-going girls who wouldn't have a one-night stand, would, because that's how powerful and magical this is. And if you don't sing that like that and you don't believe that, the fans won't either. Well, 16-year-old Kathy Sledge, she totally got it. And when you listen to that song, this girl, it was great that she was the youngster,
hmm
because she being 16, the older girls were fighting, but she pulled me aside and asked me if I thought it was going to be a hit. I thought it was going to be a super hit. And people don't realize, because We Are Family was so big, but He's the Greatest Dancer was a platinum single. We sold more than 2 million singles of that record. That was the perfect breakout record. And had we released We Are Family first, I'm not so sure that record would have sold as well as it did, because We Are Family was such a big song, so perfect, that in those days black artists never got more than 2 singles. But on that album, we got 4 singles. We got He's the Greatest Dancer with Set Up, We Are Family, and then we also got Lost in Music, and then we got a song called Thinking of You, which actually went #1 in England.
and I think in your book you said that you consider that production on that particular album to be one of your best.
It is the best. It's our finest hour. It's because we had to stand outside of ourselves, visualize an artist, and bring their light into fruition and into focus to a world that hadn't seen their light. Yeah, Sister Sledge had Love Don't Go Through No Changes on me, but you know as well as I know, and they know, that that record didn't set them up for what was about to happen. We didn't use any of that record, and that was a great record, but we didn't use any of their juice from that record to push He's the Greatest Dancer. He's the Greatest Dancer was a single event that sort of rose on its own merit. And that's because when that record was delivered to DJs and it had that people just, the DJs loved the music. It was just one of those kinds of records that people really liked before they completely understood it.